Meaning is a concept that we humans ponder from time to time. What is the meaning of the world? Why does life exist? What is my role in this life? We ask ourselves these questions occasionally and want to add meaning to our own existence, because meaning is a need for us humans. But in my opinion, the moment we need meaning the most is when we are in pain. Why am I experiencing this pain? What is the meaning of this pain? Questions like these are quite disturbing to us. In fact, we are aware that when we find pain meaningless, we make that pain even more unbearable. The author of the book Man's Search for Meaning, psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, is one of those who tried to find meaning in the suffering he endured, and I must point out that Viktor Frankl lived one of the most painful lives in the world. He was a prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp for 3 years. During this period, he endured various tortures, went hungry on most days, and battled deadly diseases. His mother, father, brother, and wife were also imprisoned in these camps, and all 4 of them lost their lives there. Viktor Frankl, however, is one of the rare people who managed to survive this deadly camp. While the vast majority in the camp were killed by the Nazis, some died from disease and starvation. Some could not endure the suffering any longer and chose to commit suicide. However, the way one of Frankl's friends died in the camp is quite interesting. His friend tells Viktor Frankl that he had a dream which foretold that he would gain his freedom on March 30th. His friend interprets this dream as a divine message and convinces himself with all his heart that this captivity will end on March 30th. But things do not go as expected. As March 30th approaches, the war intensifies and the camp conditions become harsher than ever. And as the dates approached March 30th, this friend had lost his belief in the dream. On March 29th, he becomes ill. On March 30th, he loses consciousness, and on March 31st, he passes away. And everyone in the camp thinks that this man died from illness like the others. However, according to Frankl, it was not illness but disappointment that killed his friend. He clung to that dream with all the faith he had left. But when he realized the dream would not come true, he lost all hope for the future. The meaning that the dream had added to his tragic life had disappeared. Due to this psychological state, his immune system collapsed, and the disease seized the opportunity to take over his body. Viktor Frankl, drawing from this tragic example, understands that in a camp with such harsh conditions, the only chance of survival is for a person to cling to the concept of meaning and look to the future with hope. The moment a person loses that meaning is the moment they die, and Nietzsche's quote, which frequently appears in the book, forms its foundation. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. This concept of meaning also acted as an antidote to the suffering Frankl endured. So how did Frankl manage to add meaning to such unbearable pain and overcome it? It's time to talk about the method he introduced in his book, Logotherapy. Logos simply means meaning, and logotherapy means therapy through meaning. Before delving into the details of logotherapy, I would like to mention an interesting conversation Viktor Frankl had with his patients. As I mentioned earlier, Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist and encountered patients in his career who were in very difficult situations, with lives full of pain, just like his own. He asked them this question: why don't you commit suicide? The purpose of asking the question is not to encourage patients to commit suicide, but to learn the reasons that bind them to their painful lives. To this question, a mother says she lives for her son, while a young scientist says he lives with the motivation of the scientific research he will write in the future. An elderly man responds that he lives to preserve his precious memories. Frankl uses these answers from his patients, along with his own experiences in the concentration camp, to offer 3 therapeutic methods in his logotherapy approach for the human search for meaning. The first of these methods is dedicating oneself to a task. When Frankl entered the concentration camp, he took with him pages of notes he had written over the years and intended to turn into a book. However, the Nazis, of course, confiscated these notes, and all of Frankl's years of hard work went to waste. But Frankl did not give up. He began to rewrite his work from scratch on small pieces of paper he collected in the camp, and this time he skillfully hid the pages from the Nazis. Shortly after gaining his freedom, he completed his notes and turned them into a book. That book was the one I told you about in this video. Although he couldn't see it at the time, Frankl changed the lives of millions of people, including mine, with this book. The reason Viktor Frankl dedicated himself to this work was his belief in the true meaningfulness of what he was doing. At the same time, thinking about the book he would publish in the future and how it would help people allowed him to look to the future with hope and endure the suffering. And when Frankl observed the other people in the camp, he saw a similar situation. He observed that those who dedicated themselves to a task or established a goal to pursue once they were freed from the camp had a much higher survival rate compared to others. The second method of the logotherapy approach is to love selflessly. Frankl understood that the emotion at the core of all meaning is love. Some people love their work and find meaning in what they do. Some create meaning for the sake of a loved one, and some love themselves and find meaning in their own existence. The concept of meaning varies from person to person, but the common aspect of all meanings is that they are all based on love. For Viktor Frankl, it is also love that enables him to endure these pains. He mentions in many parts of the book that he stayed strong thanks to the love he felt for his wife during the most difficult times. And this love is as far from selfishness as possible, entirely focused on the other person. Even the dream of reaching freedom and reuniting with his wife was enough to help him overcome the suffering he endured. Regarding the two methods I have mentioned so far, Viktor Frankl says this: the more a person forgets themselves by dedicating themselves to a cause they will serve, or a person they will love, the more they become human, and the more they self-actualize. Yes, we are doing quite well so far, but there is always a moment when things fall apart. As I mentioned at the beginning, Viktor Frankl's wife was among those who lost their lives in this camp. You can imagine how much pain Frankl felt when he learned of her death. In fact, it is quite difficult to even imagine such pain. His third and final method related to this topic is to endure the pain courageously. After losing his wife, Frankl falls into a severe depression and suffers more than ever before. Just as his friend in the concentration camp enters a phase of collapse after losing his dream, Frankl also experiences a kind of collapse after losing his loved one, and at that time they repeat Nietzsche's words: anyone who has a reason to live can overcome any hardship. He still has reasons to live. His suffering is not in vain. He wants to use that suffering to help alleviate the pain of others. But who will help with his own pain? Unfortunately, no one will be able to help. Even if he finds a new spouse, she will not replace his deceased wife, nor will his deceased wife come back to life. Frankl understands that in this situation what a person must do is to endure their pain bravely, with their chest out, even somewhat heroically. I specifically use the word heroically because it is also a common trait of the greatest heroes to endure the greatest pains. But those heroes are able to endure their personal pains because they are willing to sacrifice themselves for their cause. In his mission to help others, Viktor Frankl succeeded in living and adding value to humanity despite his pains by accepting his traumatic camp memories and the loss of his loved one. His statement about pain summarizes his message: when pain finds meaning, it ceases to be pain.